Okay, so moving into our new unit on medieval literature, we first need to kind of get an overview or a grasp on the actual quality so we can know what to look for when we read this type of literature. So basically, it's going to be called a romance, but don't let your preconceived notions about that term really affect you. It's something completely different than what we in modern day kind of put onto that word. So basically, a romance, a medieval romance, is going to explore the limits and successes and failures of all of these qualities. So aristocrats, chivalry like knighthood and things like that, moral virtue, loyalty to a king or any kind of monarchy, the idea of bravery, which again is centered around, just kind of keep the notion of a knight in your mind, religious devotion, codes of courtly love, which we'll talk about later, supernatural or magical events, kind of the whole fairy tale notion of the long ago and faraway land, and then an elevated tone, which again kind of applies to the fairy tale, kind of a really aristocratic air to it. So more specifically, we're going to talk about the idea of courtly love. So the conventions of the courtly love idea it's basically spiritual love between a knight and then a noble woman. And the noble woman is usually, but not always, married to someone of higher rank, maybe a king, maybe a duke, someone like that. And then this kind of literature idealizes women, which we need to keep in mind, kind of goes against Christian traditions. And then in this type of literature, courtly love, the knight generally swears his loyalty to the lady, and he agrees to obey or kind of perform deeds in her honor. And then, subsequently, he performs heroic deeds in her honor. And this always is kind of a secretive idea. Things are performed in secret. This isn't proclaimed out loud because, again, she's usually married. And then this kind of idea, it signals the cultural split of the time in the concepts of marriage. So you've got kind of a divide between the political institution and then the actual love or passionate or the spiritual side of that. So a writer of this time period, Andreas Capellanus, kind of gives us some tenets of courtly love or knighthood or kind of the medieval romance as a whole to kind of give us some ideas about what we're going to be looking for in the literature. So the first one is love and marriage are incompatible. So this kind of breeds the idea of maybe infidelity is okay in this type of literature. Marriage is no excuse for not loving, so just because a woman is married doesn't mean that, a knight can't, they can't experience love together, and this is generally more physical, or more spiritual. And then there's a dynamic in love. It's very dynamic, so it can ebb and flow, and this means you can fall out of love and come back into love, so you can love more than one person in your lifetime. And then only mature men can love, so if a man is not mature yet, it's kind of a sign his knighthood and courtly love duties kind of show his proof as a man. And then there's generosity. Jealousy equals an increase in love. And then there's a quote, it says, "Love is a stranger in the home of avarice," which is greed, which kind of goes back to the generosity. So we're also going to find three oppositions whenever we are talking about courtly love, kind of like some terms you probably need to know. So first one is, it looks like danger spelled weird, but it's actually pronounced danger, which is a French term, and it's kind of the idea of haughtiness and lordliness. And then slander, and then an opposition of the jealous one. So just kind of keep all of these ideas in mind when we're reading the literature in our medieval unit and try to look for them and find ideas of where they kind of maybe don't adhere to these qualities or maybe they do in a certain extent.